Welcome back here, Drew and Brandon talking some MLB over under regular season win totals. We did the same exact thing last year. We had some hits last year. We also had some misses. The miss that comes off the top of my head for both of us that I don't think anybody or many people really had was the Giants at 107 wins.
Yeah.
Maybe a miss, probably Yankees for both of us. I think we probably both had the over on the Yankees. And I think the Yankees were at like 100. Anyways, we're going to go in order from least amount of wins to most. Should be exciting. We just finished talking about the NBA mock draft. If you want to watch that, or sorry, not NBA, NFL, links in the description. Also should just be in the channel in general. I talked about it in the last video. We didn't have the studio for these two videos. Out of all the weeks to not have the studio, this is an unfortunate one just because we're filming back-to-back videos, but it is what it is. I guess the good thing about Zoom is like I have the win totals right in front of you guys, so you guys can see all the win totals, which is nice. It's not awesome. Like I prefer the studio still, but yeah, we'll start Orioles. That's the least amount of wins projected, and then we'll go all the way to the Dodgers, which have the most. So we'll start Orioles over under 62.5. I said before we started filming this, I don't want to spend too much time on the Orioles and stuff because if they have over 62.5, it's probably not much more than 70. So I'm gonna go over. I don't know. I think it's gonna be about 62.5. That's really my take. Is I think they're probably one of the worst, if not the worst team in the MLB, and they play in probably the hardest division in baseball. I don't think it's probably. I mean, you have four teams that could realistically make it to the World Series this year.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's why I'm going under, just because you're playing those teams 19 times a year. Like, what are the odds you're winning more than five of those games? It's just so slim. So yeah, I'm going under. They have no talent, no pitching, really no offense. Adley Rutschman's already injured, so he's not even going to start the season on time. So yeah, I'm going under.
Pirates 64.5. It's kind of the same thing for me, except they don't play in the AL East. So maybe I should have got under on the Orioles. I don't know. It's going to be about 64.5. Just to keep it even, I'll go under. But again, I think it's going to be, I think 64.5 is pretty accurate. So
I think it's accurate as well. I'm gonna go over maybe by a game or two. I think the question is, um, if they trade Brian Reynolds, obviously their best player. I can see them doing that, but also not. I don't know. But again, they're in a weaker division in the NL Central, so you can definitely get wins there. You have Cubs, Reds, you have teams like that. You can kind of get wins off those teams. So I'm gonna go over, but again, not by that much. Maybe a game or two.
after that, the Diamondbacks is 66.5.
Yeah.
I think this is probably an over. Again, is it by more than 5 games? Probably not. But I'll say over, and I'll have them at 70 wins for the season.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna go under. I I don't really like anyone on the Diamondbacks. I like Tel Marte, but there's not a lot to love about the Diamondbacks. It's not like they have a crazy prospect who's going to come up and like light things up or anything like that. So again, in the NL West, one of the tougher divisions is obviously Dodgers. The Giants will still be good again. Padres, they'll still be pretty good. The Rockies, I think they'll actually be kind of decent, but it's just a tough division, and I just don't think they're that good. So I'm going to go under.
Yeah, the Rockies are up next here at 69.5. Yeah, I think this is the one where I think there's probably a few people that are probably like, if I was to do a power rankings, listen, do I think there's much difference between being 30th and like 23rd? Not too much of a difference. Like I don't see any teams 32 through 23 making a legit playoff run, but we've seen crazier things in the MLB, I guess. So, but the Rockies, anyways, I'll go over. I think some people maybe even I think you talked about some people maybe a little bit higher. I didn't really love their offseason moves at all. Their off seasons the last I guess whether it's off season or trade deadline trades to me haven't made much sense really at all ever. But really the last like 5 years, letting go of Story and then signing Brian and then also the Arenado trade just didn't make much sense to me at all. As a team that like to me feels like they want to save money but also wants to be like just competitive enough to like sell out the stadium every game. And I think they went about it in a complete just wrong way with Chris Bryant. I don't hate Chris Bryant at all, but the moves are just confusing. Um, I'll go over 69 and a half, but I don't. I think there might be people that like this team more than I do. So
Yeah, I would totally agree with the confusing part of everything. You trade Arenado for nothing just to sign Chris Bryant to basically a similar deal than what Arenado was getting. You let Story go when you easily could have traded him. I totally agree, but they still have somewhat of a, like they have pieces offensively. C.J. Cron, Ryan McMahon, Chris Bryant, Charlie Blackmon's still there. Like they have pieces offensively. You play there 81 times a year at cores. Like you're gonna win games, even if the pitching still sucks. So. I'm gonna go over. Last year they were actually pretty decent for how bad they were, so I think that's gonna repeat itself this year. I think they'll go over 69 and a half.
up next, a team that's technically speak my favorite team, even though I'm
Your
not from
team.
there. Huh? My
I
team?
said your team. Yeah, I
Yeah,
said your
the
team.
Washington Nationals. I'll let you go first. I guess I'll let you go first with this one.
Yeah, I'll go first. I mean,
You
look,
feeling
they have.
is this gonna be an under or
I don't know. I'm kind of leaning under. Again, tough division. Again, we said the AL East is the hardest division. This is probably the second hardest division. Well, maybe not second hardest, but it's one of the hardest ones.
it's a
Um,
competitive division for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the top three teams are, the top three teams, so, the Mets, the Braves, and the Phillies. Like, those are going to be really good teams this year, no doubt. So, if you made a tough division, they have, again, I love Juan Soto. It sucks that he's going to be on a team like this that's probably going to win under 70 games, but, the pitching's not really there. Scherzer's gone. No Strasburg. Corbin, Patrick Corbin, what really is him? Bullpen's not really there other than Soto. Josh Bell is there. Maybe a couple prospect guys can come up, but there's nothing really there. So yeah, I'm gonna go under 70 and a half.
I'm gonna go over. Definitely not a bias pick at all. Listen, I don't think they're gonna be good, but I think they're gonna be I think for a team that's only 70 wins, I think they're gonna be kind of exciting team to watch. I think Soto's gonna make a legit push for NL MVP. Is he gonna win it? Probably not. I think he'll probably have really really good stats, but there's gonna be a guy that has similar stats to him, but is on a team that is a 90 plus win team instead of being on a 70ish win team, and I think that probably pushes them over the edge. Adding Nelson Cruz. I does it really mean much for them long term or anything? No, but it's an ad, I guess. So I think that's cool. It matters for the over under, I guess. If we can see production pick up for like Victor Robles as well, I'm not betting on it, but if that happens, I think this team can do well enough to get more than 70 wins. So I'll bet over. I think they get 75.
Yeah. Next team athletics. So 70 and a half, same number. I'm kind of surprised it's at 70 and a half. Obviously, full strip down, full sell mode for them this offseason. Trading Olson, trading Chapman. They traded Sean Manaea. Like, they've just gotten rid of everyone basically. Surprised it's at 70 and a half. I'm going under. I mean, again, I guess the part that would make you hesitate on that is that it's the A's and they do seem to just like win games and stuff like that. But I mean, you trade, your two best players and your best pitcher, and you expect to still win games. It's just tough to do that. And again, they're in a tough division as well, AL West. Like there's some good teams in the AL West, so um, I would be very surprised if they got over 70 and a half wins. So I'm going under.
Yeah, I'm gonna go under as well. I think trading your two best players, your best player being Ramon Laureano, who's I guess not gonna come back for. Is he gonna be there at the opening of the season? I don't think so.
I
So
don't think so. I don't think so.
and I agree with you. Like the Athletics are similar to like they're almost like they're kind of similar to the Rays in a way that they just find a way to get wins with not as
Yeah.
much talent, but this team has like really nothing. I could honestly see this team being like the worst team in the MLB, except for maybe like the Pirates and Orioles. Like I could legitimately see it. So
Yeah, it's like they're on the level of Pirates Orioles, but because they have like they have like that feeling around them that they can kind of just garner wins just randomly. Like you hesitate, but I mean I would totally agree. The talent on the team would suggest that it's a bottom three team.
they're like I
But
guess they're like the OG analytics team in baseball.
yeah,
So I think that's somehow that's kind of how they got a lot of wins, but never really got over the hump. So
yeah. But next team, Rangers. Yeah, so the other team in the AL West, 74 and a half, so a little bit of a jump now. Kind of getting closer to the 500 mark. Rangers again. big signings in Seager and Semien. Obviously, they made a couple other trades to get a couple pitchers, a couple other guys. I think they made improvements to their team. 74 and a half is tough though. I'd like to say over, but at the same time, I think I'm going to say under because I just don't know if the pitching is there. Again, they're in a hitter ballpark, which, helps their offense. But again, when their pitching is not really like that, it's tough to overcome that if you're giving up, 6, 7 runs a game. So I'm going to go under, but I do like where they're going. I think if they get a pitcher or two in the next couple of years, now again, they drafted Jack Leiter, who went to New Jersey or was out of New Jersey. He's going to be coming up in the next couple of years. So I like where they're going in the future, but for this year, I'm going to go under 74 and a half.
I honestly think I'm like kind of the opposite. I I think in the short term, I like this team more than I like them in the long term. Not that they're not going to get better in the long term, but to me, they're like timeline's a little confusing. You go out and sign Corey Seager, which I think is a good signing. He just has to stay healthy. If he stays healthy, he's a
Yeah.
guy that's going to get a couple MVP votes every year. Is he going to win it any particular year? Maybe, maybe not, but he'll get MVP votes. But Simeon to me is a guy that's like, how many more years is Simeon going to be, you know, a great player? I don't know. I to me, it's just like your pitching's probably going to take 2 or 3 years to develop. By the time your pitching develops, Simeon is probably a guy that you may not even want on your team. Hopefully, Corey Seager's healthy. I mean, he has to be healthy for this team to do anything in the long term to
Yeah.
me. So I'm going to go over on the win total. I don't think it's by much, but I do. I think this team could be a 500 baseball team. Um, but long term, I have question marks about this team.
Yeah, so yeah, you're more concerned long term. I'm more concerned short term, I guess. But we'll see what happens. Again, the next two teams are actually the same win total, 74 and a half for the Cubs and Reds. We can kind of just do them together, at least in my mind. They're kind of similar teams, both in the NL Central, obviously. Cubs, obviously, traded Baez last year, traded Bryant, traded Rizzo. Just kind of got rid of everyone. They actually have some decent pieces on that team. They signed Marcus Stroman, but besides Stroman, their starting pitching is not good. Bullpen really don't have anyone. Offense, a couple pieces here and there, but nothing really. So 74 and a half, I mean, I feel like I have to go under. I just don't see how this team can get over. Yeah, I don't see how this team gets 75 plus wins. I just don't think they're that good of a team. And I wouldn't be surprised if they have a couple more, guys they're trading away at the deadline. So I'm going to go under for the Cubs.
Yeah, no, I'm in agreement here. They essentially blew it up, and I think they're only going to continue to really just kind of tear down at this team and get it down to, they got their World Series in 2016. They realistically, when we look back at that team, which we could do now, we could also do it in a couple years from now. I think it's a little bit of a disappointment that they didn't get more than one World Series run out of this team. I think there was a lot of potential in that 2016 team, and it was a team that you kind of looked at and you said, okay, this is a team that's going to compete and pretty much be in the NLCS every year for the next like 5 years. We ended up not
Yeah.
seeing that, partly because the NL does have the Dodgers. It has a couple other teams that have been really competitive as well. But this is a team to me that should have made more than just one run at a World Series, and you've been tearing it down the past half a year or whatever. I go under as well. I think they're a team that probably actually does. Again, I'm more just agreeing with you more, but does okay to start the season, but clearly not a real contender, and they kind of blow it up. Maybe they trade. I don't know. Maybe they trade Kyle Hendricks. I don't know. We'll see. But
Yeah. But again, moving to the Reds, other team in the NL Central. Again, similar situation. They kind of tore it down a little bit, traded Suarez, traded Winker. Votto's still there. They traded Sonny Gray. Luis Castillo will probably be traded at the deadline. So they have so many different questions about that team. Castellanos is obviously gone too. He's on the Phillies now. So not much of an offense. You have Jonathan India, who won Rookie of the Year last year, but not much of an offense. Pitching's not It's I guess it's not bad, but it's not entirely there. Um, I feel like I have to go under again. I just don't love this team, and I think they could still sell some pieces off of the deadline. So it's hard for me to go over on this team, especially again if they start off really bad. There's just no way because they will for sure be selling at the deadline. So I'm gonna go under on the Reds too.
yeah, I think 74 and a half is pretty accurate for the Reds. I'll go under. I think this is a team that like a couple of off seasons ago, really tried to make a few off season moves that to me I didn't really love, and I think in hindsight they haven't. They clearly haven't had a past few good off seasons, and they're gonna feel the repercussions of that. Making a few moves that really don't push you over any sort of hump, and now you're kind of in that position where you gotta kind of tear stuff down and make some trade a Sonny Gray, everything like that. Yeah, I do think that this is a team that probably finishes about 74 and a half. I'll go under, but I think it's, I think that I could see them at 74 for sure. So
Yeah. Next team is Marlins at 75 and a half. I feel like I've been going under a lot. I'm going to go over on the Marlins. They actually made some decent moves in the offseason. Signed Avisail Garcia, signed Jorge Soler, the World Series MVP from last year. Extended some guys, made some other small moves. Again, is this going to be an over where they're over 80 wins? No, I think they're still in that 70, 76 to 79 win range. But they tend to play the top three teams in the NL East like tough. Like I feel like they always play the Mets good, they play the Braves good, they play the Phillies good. Like I feel like they can get some wins off those teams. Obviously with the Nationals, who are worse than the Marlins, like they can for sure win off them. So I have them going over, but not by that much.
yeah, I'm gonna go under. I do agree that I think they play the teams in the division pretty well considering the past 5+ years. It's been a really competitive division,
Yeah,
but I still just don't love this team. Obviously, no Jeter, which doesn't really matter on the field, but I think if the main reason Jeter left is because this franchise has a lack to commitment to actually make a legitimate team that could make a World Series push. I'm not saying you would buy on this team or whatever, but like ownership clearly to me, there's a sign that they're cheap. They could offload a couple pieces. This is so yeah. I go under. I think 75 and a half, pretty accurate to me, but I'd go under.
All right, so you're going to go under. I went over. Next team, also 75 and a half wins, the Royals. Again, we can kind of do the next two teams. It's Royals, Guardians, both at 75 and a half. Again, another weird name to get used to, the Guardians. It's tough. I don't really like the name, but Royals at 75 and a half. I think it's exciting because they have Bobby Witt, who made the open day roster. He's going to start from day one. Again, one of the top prospects in baseball. It's exciting. They have a decent team. Like they have a couple pieces offensively. Starting pitching is obviously their biggest question. They signed Zach Greinke this offseason, which was kind of like their big starting pitching addition, which is a problem considering he's 38, 39, and that's your big addition. But I think their offense can, in a weaker division, I think their offense can give them something. Bobby Witt really like has an insane year for a rookie, and he is up there for rookie of the year, even wins it. Like they're gonna win some games. They have a couple of the pieces, like I said, so I'm gonna go over on them 75 and a half.
I'm gonna go under. I pretty much agree with everything you said. The problem is when your off season addition is 39-year-old Zach Greinke, whose fastball is like, it's not Jared Weaver at 30 whatever level, but it's like, how consistent is this team's pitching going to be? I think Perez is a stud. I think, like you said, Witt has a potential to win AL Rookie of the Year. But I'm going to say under. I think this team will be. I think 75 and a half is pretty accurate, but I'll go under.
Yeah. And switching to Cleveland, again, 75 and a half as well. They just extended Jose Ramirez. It seemed like he was maybe even going to get traded to like the Padres or someone. But other than Jose Ramirez, it's not a lot that's in Cleveland right now. Now the pitching is still there. They still have pieces pitching wise, which I think helps. But it's the offense. It's just like how many runs are they going to score? They struggled last year and they didn't improve like at all this year. And so I think there's a lot of questions how they're going to score runs, but their pitching can for sure keep them in games, which I think helps. Um, Going over or under on them, I'd like to say over, but I also just wouldn't be surprised if maybe they sold some pieces, whatever they had at the deadline. I don't know. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go. I think I'm gonna go under. I think I'll go under, even though I'm not really sure.
I think 75 and a half is, again, I think it's a pretty accurate number. I think they'll be around that. I'm going to go over. I think this team overachieved last year, probably. I think they'll probably see a little bit, a little bit of maybe a drop in production, but if Shane Bieber stays healthy and Tristan McKenzie pitches like he did probably in like the second half of last year, if you can get, if you that's a solid 1 and 2, and then if Jose Ramirez can be, a good player, then I think this team can pull off some wins, and I think they can find themselves where they have a legitimate option to like maybe even buy at the trade deadline. Not that they would, because this team is. I think this team's probably known to be just a little cheap, right? But I think
For
this team.
sure.
I think this team could be in a situation where they say, okay, we could actually buy here, like at the trade deadline. I'm not saying they will, but I think they could be that good that they have a possibility to do that. So.
Yeah, and another team, AL Central, the Tigers, 78.5 wins. Now, I've seen a lot of things on the Tigers. A lot of people are high on them. I don't know if I'm one of those people. I'm just gonna say I'm under for 78.5. Look, they made some additions. They got Javi Baez. You call up Spencer Torkelson. You're the number one overall draft pick from 2020 to be your first baseman of the future. Casey Mize, another year in the MLB, being your number one guy. I like the pieces that they have for sure. And again, Riley Green, another top prospect. He broke his foot, but he's going to be playing this year. Like I like their pieces, but I just don't know if your best player is Javi Baez, if you're gonna be like how many wins are you getting? So and again, besides Mize, like it's not like they have great pitching, it's not like they have other great pieces offensively. So I am a little surprised it's over 78 and a half. And I again I kind of understand it because there's some hype around them, but I don't know about like the overall talent on the team to get them over 78.5 wins and basically be a 500 team. I think they're in the 70s for sure, probably around 75, I would like to say. I think there are a couple wins below 78.5.
And maybe I'm a fool for this. I could easily see you being right about this. I'm gonna go over. Listen, do I love Javi Baez? Not really. But can't underestimate the addition of Erod. I honestly
Yeah.
do think a change of scenery. I think Erod is can be good. I think AJ Hinch is a top. I don't know. Is he a top? He might be a top five manager in the league. Um,
I like him. I do like him as a manager, but
Especially when they're cheating. He's for sure a top manager. Now, I
oh,
don't think he's gonna cheat with this team, but who knows? I don't know. I like this team.
yeah.
Again, now are they going to be a legit contender? No, I don't think so. The top end talent just isn't there, like you talked about. But yeah, if Erod and Mize can do well, which I think is a possibility, am I going to bet on it? I mean, I guess I am. So I'll go over. But again, is it going to be more than 81 wins? Probably not. But I could see them at a 500 team. So
Yeah, but I think the most interesting team in this division is the next team. That's the Twins at 80.5. Again, interesting, confusing team that they are. I'm going to go over for them. And I'm saying interesting, confusing because, it seemed like they were kind of ready to sell off. They had a couple of good seasons the last couple of years, but it seemed like they were kind of getting rid of pieces, not really, trying to save money, trying to wait for the future a little bit. But then they signed Carlos Correa, obviously, the biggest free agent signing, just in terms of the player. Obviously, the contract money, it's a 1 year deal basically, but you get him, you get a fully healthy Byron Buxton. He's been great in spring training so far. Again, if he stayed healthy all of last year, like he may be the MVP. I mean, he had 19 homers in 60 games. So you get those two guys like here and back, like excuse me, that's huge for your offense. Now pitching is the question. They got Sonny Gray, but other than that, they really don't have anyone. Their bullpen's okay, it's not bad, but I just don't know where the pitching will come from. But offensively, no question about it. They're going to be good offensively. So I'm going over 80.5.
I'll go the same. Am I as high on them as you are? Maybe not, but I think there are a lot of people that are really high on this team. I've heard people be pretty high on this team. 80.5 seems a little low for me. Like if you're telling me the Tigers are going to be better than the Twins, I probably wouldn't agree with you. So I'll go over as well. I think this is like an 85 win team. I think there are plenty of years where, in the MLB where Carlos Correa picks up like a humongous contract, like a ridiculously big contract. So I like the Carlos Correa ad. I think he, for sure. I agree on the Buxton thing. So yeah, I'll go over. I think this is I think this could be, I don't know, this team could easily make the playoffs. So
Yeah, and again, it's an easier division, like we kind of talked about. But Next team, again, jumping up a couple more wins, 84.5, the Mariners. Again, another really interesting prospect that was called up, Julio Rodriguez. I love Julio Rodriguez. Again, the AL Rookie of the Year race could be one of the best of all time. You have three top prospects who all got called up, who are all starting day one. So it could be an amazing race at the end of the season. But 84.5, they won, I think it was 90. I think they won 90 games last year, 90, 91. Barely missed the playoffs. Some of the Blue Jays, probably would have made the playoffs any other year, but I like them going over. I mean, they signed Robbie Ray, the Cy Young winner from last year. Now, do I think Robbie Ray's a Cy Young award winner type pitcher? Not really. I think he had a really good year last year, but I think he's still a solid pitcher. I think he's still a pretty good pitcher who can be your number one. Even if he's not like a true number one, but they have a couple other guys on their team. The other Rookie of the Year, Kyle Lewis, who was basically injured for a lot of last year, he'll be back this year. So they have pieces. They signed Adam Frazier, who was an All-Star last year with the Pirates. So I like where they're going with their team, and I think 84.5. I think they can easily go over that.
I'm gonna go under. I think 84.5 is pretty accurate. I guess I don't disagree with anything you said. I would say Robbie Ray is a guy that, listen, I would agree. I think he had a really good year. He was a guy that like almost like nobody really wanted until he had a really good week with the Blue Jays. And there's a reason that he didn't go sign some ridiculous contract, which for the most part, a lot of Cy Young winners do. Obviously he didn't. And I'm not sure this team has the top end talent. Listen, I don't think you need top end talent to make the playoffs, but I think the AL is pretty competitive, and I think this division, honestly, I mean, there's a team that we're going to talk about in a second that I am going to go over on, and I'm going to go under on this team. So,
Yeah, well, the team you're talking about is the Angels at 84.5. You said you're going over. I'm going over. It's time. It's time for them to make the playoffs. It's time for them to actually do something positively for this team. Trout, Ohtani, you really can't ask for a better 1-2. I mean, you can't ask for a better 1-2 in baseball than Trout and Ohtani. Again, the pitching is still going to be a question. Ohtani, yeah, he's your number one, but he's not going to give you 30 starts. So you're relying on Noah Syndergaard, who, has the potential to be good, but can he stay healthy? Can he actually be good when he's, actually pitching? I don't know. But offensively, if Anthony Rendon stays healthy, like that's an all-star type player at third base. Like again, Trout, Ohtani, Jarrett Walsh, their first baseman, was really productive last year. Like this team should win over 85 games. Joe Madden as your manager, like I don't love him as a manager, but he always wins. So yeah, I mean, if this team doesn't go over, then I really don't know what else to say, to be honest.
listen, I think this franchise from the start is just not a great franchise. Listen, when you're the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim or whatever, listen, I think that's just a bad look. I think it's a bad start. I don't think it makes much sense because you're clearly trying to be something you're not. But anyways, to get to the actual on the field stuff, I agree. I mean, Ohtani and Trout, you're not doing better than that. I agree. Otani's not going to be able to give you 30 starts. Syndergaard, I think, is a clear question mark, but I'm going to bet on him to work out. I mean, there was a time and period when he was healthy and looking like a promising pitcher for the next 10 years where you were like, okay, who's the number one, DeGrom or Syndergaard? There was a legit period when that was a thing. Obviously, that hasn't been for a long while now, but because DeGrom's only gotten better and Syndergaard's been hurt, and even when he is like somewhat healthy, he doesn't look very impressive. But I think Syndergaard can hopefully look all right. If you just get some stability and consistency pitching-wise, there's no way this team is under 84 wins to me. So that's to me, that's like the clear question mark is, can you get some consistent pitching throughout the whole year? I think that's been the question mark for the Angels for the past, like, I don't know, however many years. But I think this is the year where it looks like it could actually happen. So I'll bet the over.
Yeah.
Am I going to bet the over by a lot? I don't know. But I think this team could make a for real playoff push. So
Yeah. Yeah, I think like we said, like it seems like they have to go over this year. Because if they don't make the playoffs, I just don't know what you do with that team.
I don't. Yeah, like how do you assess Mike Trout's career if like he never makes the playoffs? Honestly,
Well, I mean, he has made it one time, but I mean,
let me
it was a
rephrase
wild
it. I
card.
mean, yeah,
But
like how do you assess Trout's career if he's never on like a legit team? I don't know.
yeah, it's baseball, so it's not entirely on one player. But yeah, I mean, at some point, you would assume that an all-time great player would make the playoffs, make runs, get to a World Series, win a World Series. Yeah, uh, I I think that if he never were to actually have a real shot at the World Series, like I think people I think they would look down on him, but at the same time, it's like, what did that team ever do to actually create a winning team? Now, look, they've tried to spend the money and they've tried to do stuff, but they've always ignored pitching. They've never drafted well, besides Trout. And they just seem to spend money in the wrong places. Like, that's just, like, what can he do about that? It's tough, but I would agree. It's going to be something to look down upon. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean Rendon's a guy we didn't talk about. Rendon, I think he needs to play well. He's a guy that when we talk about spending money in maybe questionable places, it's like, could that money have been spent better elsewhere? I think in hindsight, right now, looks like potentially, yeah. Ideally, he has a great year though, and looks like a guy that's in contention for, you know, instead of us talking about the best 1-2 punch, we talk about the best 1-2-3 punch in the league. Um, but yeah, yeah. Out of
Yeah.
curiosity, this is kind of going off the path, but just quickly, who would you rank Jeter or A-Rod as a better all time player?
I mean, A-Rod, I think A-Rod is a better all-time player.
Okay. Do you think it's close
Uh,
or?
like, we're just talking about like talent, like just
I mean, just like if you're again like if I'm saying give me your 50 best players of all time, just like who do you have higher on that list?
I mean, personally, I'd put A-Rod. I think A-Rod is like one of the most talented players to ever play baseball. So
I agree. I think the only reason it's close is again the thing we talked about with the postseason runs, and A Rod was just consistently worse in the playoffs almost every single year, and Jeter was consistently better. Um,
yeah,
and I'm not saying Trout's like A Rod at all. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying if we don't get the potential to see Trout go on a run, like have a real chance to actually go on one of those types of runs, it's not like I'm gonna slam Trout for it because again, it's not basketball, it's not football. You just can't carry your team to the playoffs. But to not have that opportunity, it essentially hurts his legacy because he just never had the opportunity. So
I think a good comparison, and we're not going to like spend a lot of time on it, but Rogers Brady to the point that people would say Rogers is more talented than Brady, but when it comes to postseason, Brady's got 7 rings, Rogers has one, A-Rod has 1 ring, Jeter has 5. It's just like when it came to postseason and winning time, one guy, just was better than the other guy, even if the other guy was more talented. And it's not by that much. Like obviously, Jeter's immensely talented, Brady's immensely talented, but just based off pure talent and skill, like you would pick Rogers and A-Rod over Jeter and Brady. I think most people would.
I think most
Just
people
based
would.
off
Yeah.
yeah, it's based off like straight just talent and being on the field, just what you do on the field. But yeah, when it came to postseason winning championships, it's obviously the other guy. But the next team, that was the Angels. We're gonna move to the Cardinals, 85 and a half. I This is again a tricky one. I'm gonna go under. Jack Flaherty, their best pitcher, is already injured. He's been injured. He's already out. For at least a month or two, and it's an injury where it's like you have to ramp him back up. It's probably a decent chance he gets re-injures it again. It's a shoulder thing, so it's just this whole thing with his arm. That's not a good sign at all. Offensively, yeah, they have pieces. I like Tyler O'Neill. I like Arenado, Goldschmidt, Tommy Edman. I love their pieces offensively, and they're a great defense. But I don't know where that pitching is going to come from if Flaherty's not there. So um, I think that's the question. I could for sure see them going over 85 and a half, but I have them going under.
I'm in agreement here. I would agree with you pretty much across the board. Your significant ad this offseason is like Steven Matz.
Yeah,
I think this is the Brewers division this year, and we'll talk about the Brewers, but I'm gonna go over on the Brewers. I think this is the division for the Brewers. I don't think this division is gonna be particularly strong, so I think the Brewers should be able to get more than their win total. So we'll talk about that when we get there. But
yeah. But next team again, 85 and a half wins as well. I really like this team, the Phillies. You get Kyle Schwarber, you get Nick Castellanos, you have Bryce Harper, who won MVP last year, and you've seen him in spring training. He's been amazing. He hit 2 more homers today as we're recording. He's been incredible. Uh, Again, I like their pieces. Pitching wise, you have Zach Wheeler, you have Aaron Nola. That's a pretty decent one too. As long as they can stay healthy, Wheeler in particular, like like he finished third in Cy Young last year. Like that's or second or third, whatever it was. But that's a really good one too. The bullpen's obviously going to be the question. It always is with the Phillies, but if they can just fill that bullpen again, they'll make moves at the deadline for sure. But they're going to score runs. They're going to hit homers, and they're pitching. When you have that 1-2, it's going to be pretty good. And I really do like this team. So for sure, I'm hammering the over 85 and a half.
Yeah, I pride myself and think of myself as a man of faith. As there's a drive into deep left field by Castellanos, and that'll be a home run. Um, it's a good meme. Anyways, I
It
just
is a
I
good
figured
meme.
I figured I should say that. I didn't remember the quote exactly, so I had to just to make sure I got it right. I had to look it up, but anyways, I'm on board with you on this team. Listen, it's probably a little bit of a biased pick because historically Harper was my favorite player until he got to the Phillies. I guess he still is my favorite player. Like I don't know. I'm not really like I don't really have like favorite players necessarily. Maybe I used to more than I do now at least. But I like this team. I pretty much agree with everything with you. I think Castellanos ad is a good ad. I think they've got good talent across the board, and I think if this team's consistent, I think this team should honestly make a push to winning this division.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think that's the goal is to win this division. I mean, it has to be because a wild card. There's so many teams in the NL. It's tough, but yeah, they're looking to win this division for sure. Um, but going kind of to a similar team, I guess, just in terms of just like position in the division and kind of talent, the Red Sox, 85 and a half. Now, big ad, this offseason was Trevor Story, obviously. That was right, the last couple of weeks. But Chris Sale's already out. He's already injured. He's on the 60-day right now. So your top pitcher, again, you lost Erod. So your top pitcher, now you still have Evaldi, but Sale's not going to be there. Now, offensively, it's great. You have Devers, Bogart, Story. Like, you really can't ask for much more than that. Still Verdugo, obviously. So their offense, I think, will be fine, but pitching is for sure the question for them. And last year they got it done, without really a lot of guys. But I feel like this year it's gonna be tougher. Now the Blue Jays will be better this year. The Yankees will, be the same. The Rays will be the same, which is obviously very good. So I think it's tough. I don't want to go under, but I think I have to. I think it'll be by like a game or two. Maybe it might even be 85 wins, but I do see them going under, to be honest.
Yeah, this isn't my favorite team. Like maybe it should theoretically be because I'm from Massachusetts, but this is a team I probably just follow the most just because I'm from there and that's a team you hear about the most. When you listen to something local, that's what you're going to hear. Um, I'm going to go over. Listen, I like the Story ad. I think it's a pretty solid contract and I think he's a pretty good player. I think there's a couple question marks is I don't want him to hit 240. There's always the Coors Field factor when a guy comes from Colorado. So that's a little bit of a question mark, but honestly, I think he's going to hit. I think he's going to be good. Long term, I have a couple question marks about this team. Like, what's the situation with Story, Bogarts, and Devers? Like, Bogart says he doesn't want to move off short. Is Story just going to be your permanent second baseman, like for the duration of his contract? I have a tough time thinking that's going to be the case. Maybe it is. I don't know. Do you move again? Maybe you move Devers off a third and you move Bogarts to third and Devers and Story to short. But if Bogarts doesn't want to play third, he doesn't want to play third. Brings me to the point where I'm like, are they planning to get rid of Bogarts? Maybe not this season or anything, but like, do they not plan to have him as like a career Red Sox? Like, maybe not. I don't know, but I'm gonna go over with this team. Offensively, I think they've got everything. I think this is a pretty stacked lineup, except for like Jackie Bradley Jr., who's like the worst player ever. I can't even believe he's on the Red Sox again. But pitching is for sure a question mark. I've never expected anything out of Sale ever since they signed him to that extension a few years back. So I think he's a lottery ticket at this point. Relying on Eovaldi is always a question mark too. So it's a question mark, but offensively, this team is just too good. I'm gonna go over. As long as the pitching's like not a total disaster, they'll be fine.
All right, so you're going over. I'm going under. Another team at 85 and a half. The last team, the Giants. Now, I mean, I guess a couple moves they made, they signed Carlos Rodon, who was pretty good last year for the White Sox. They lose Kevin Gausman, though. They're, Cy Young type pitcher from last year. Buster Posey retires. So a couple of losses, a couple of gains, I guess. But I'm gonna go over. I still do like this team. Will they win 107 games again? I don't know about that, but I think they can for sure get over 85 and a half. The next team is another team in their division. I don't really understand them at 88 and a half, but we'll get to them next. But I do like the Giants over 85 and a half.
I mean, they were at 107 last year, right? So how can they fall off? Essentially, if you were to bet the under on this, right, you're betting that they are under 20. They're 20 over, more than 20 losses worse than last year. I am going to bet the under, though. I think last year was a little bit of a lightning in a bottle type of year for the Giants. I think that's kind of obvious. You'd expect them to, be kind of similar to what they were last year, but I mean, let's face it, this division to me is still really good. It's a really good division. Any division the Dodgers are in is pretty much going to be a good division. You're going to have to play the Dodgers. We're going to talk about, we're going to talk about Padres. I don't see it. I think losing Chris Bryant, I don't think it's a huge loss. Like, you're for sure gonna just not be good. But I mean, the best player on this team is Brandon Crawford. That's not a bad player, right? But I don't see this team, repeating what they did last season. So
Yeah. And like I was saying, the next team is the other team in the NL West, the Padres. They're 88 and a half. I look, they made moves. They got Sean Manaea. They got, they traded for Luke Voigt. Like, they've made a couple other moves as well. But I don't know. I just don't know how. Like, for some reason, I just don't love this team. For some reason, again, Tatis is already injured, which I love Tatis, but I don't. I like you're saying. Like, I don't really have a favorite player in the league, but he's obviously up there as one of them. But he is considering the fact he's already injured. He's going to miss at least a month or two, and then who knows? He always gets injured during a season too. Like, you need Machado to be like, MVP, like he was in the shortened 2020 season. Like, you need a lot of things to go right, in my opinion. You need your pitching to be really well. Like, they have a lot of pitchers, but some of them have been injured. Some of them have been a little inconsistent. Some of them are younger. Like, you need them to all be on the same page, and they struggle with pitching for some reason. They just never have good pitching coaches. They have Bob Melvin as their new manager now. They have a good bullpen, but for some reason, I just don't like this team. I don't know why. So I'm going to go under. I think the Giants will finish higher than the Padres will.
yeah, I mean, I can see that take. I'm gonna go over on the Padres. I mean, I'm going under on the Giants. You almost got to go over on the Padres to a certain extent. Um, I like this team. I mean, I agree with pretty much everything you said. I guess I'm just a little bit higher on this team than you are. I think Voigt if this team's going to work out, if they're going to go over, I think Voigt has to be a good addition in hindsight. I think it will be a good addition. Is he going to repeat some of the best years he's ever had? Probably not. But if he can be good and he can offer something at first base and DH, I think this team can make a legit wild card run. So
Yeah. I guess we'll see. We'll see. We're a little bit different on that. But the next team, the last team in the NL Central, I think we're for sure on the same page about this one. The Brewers, 89 and a half. Yeah, I'm going over. I really like this team. I'm expecting Yelich to have like a pretty good bounce back year. Maybe not MVP Yelich, but a pretty good bounce back year. This division's theirs, and the pitching's going to drive them for sure, and the offense will be there as well. So I'm going over.
I'm going over as well. I think the division. I think it's good for the Brewers. I think they're in a good division for them personally. They have Patrick Corbin's brother, Corbin Burns, who is obviously a really good player. I think the Hunter Renfroe ad is. I don't see how that can't be a good ad for them. So yeah,
Yeah.
I think they're over.
Yep. Same page there, like I thought. Next team again, 89 and a half, the Rays. I think this is where it gets more interesting with the remaining teams, probably besides one. But the Rays, 89 and a half. Again, they're the Rays. It's just like it's hard to knock them off. Again, they didn't really make any huge changes. They did just trade Austin Meadows, but that kind of seemed like that was a possibility. Just it seemed like he was kind of just out of time there. But it's just hard to bet against them. I mean, a full season of Wander Franco also, like, that's huge. Like, he's going to be insane this year. So I'm going over. As a Yankee fan, I wish it was under, but it's hard to see this team not going over. It's just so much talent, the front office, the coaching, just everything. It's just hard for this team not to win 90 plus games.
We're going to talk about the AL East. Obviously, we just talked about the Red Sox and now the other three teams. This is one of them. I'm going over. I'm not going to spoil my other picks, but I am going over on this. I think it's over barely. Like my prediction, if I'm giving them a certain amount of wins, is 90. So I'm going over. I think 90 is my number for them. And I pretty much agree with everything you said. I think Franco's going to be. Yeah, I'm not saying he's going to win a L MVP, but I wouldn't be shocked, right? If they're going to have a legit season and win the division in the AL East, who's going to be their MVP? It might be him. So it probably would be him.
Yeah, it probably would be him. But next team, the Mets, again, another interesting team, 90.5 wins. Again, tough. I mean, DeGrom's already injured. Again, they signed Scherzer, so you have DeGrom, Scherzer. So obviously, the best 1-2 you could ever ask for starting pitching wise. But DeGrom's already injured. Who knows what's going to happen if he stays healthy? What goes on with him? That's a huge question mark. But offensively, you're expecting Lindor to bounce back. You get Mark Canha, you get Eduardo Escobar, you get Starling Marte. They still kept Dom Smith even despite all those rumors about him getting traded. So and you have the DH in the NL, so him and Pete Alonso now, like so many different things. Robinson Cano comes back, like that's another piece to this equation. Like it, I'm gonna go over because I think their offense can actually carry them. It seems like in the past it was always the pitching. I still think the pitching will be good, but I think they actually have a good like a legit offense to actually score runs and bail out their pitching if the pitching's not there. So I'm gonna go over 90.5.
Yeah, it's like such a tough one for me too. I really want to go under on this team because I do think they're going to be disappointing. But to me, 90.5 is pretty low, even with DeGrom's injury. They've made too many moves this offseason. Even if all of them aren't home run moves, they just have to be not disasters, and this team should still get over 90.5 wins to me. I see them in
Yeah.
the low 90s. I'd agree, Scherzer, DeGrom, when DeGrom is healthy, which he should be at some point. I don't know how much time he's going to miss, but as long as he's back for the playoffs and this team's in the playoffs, then that's just going to be that's really good. So I don't love Showalter either. I don't know how great of a manager he's going to be. I maybe other people like him more than I have historically. I'll go over though. Like to me this number just feels a little low. If this was at like 90 93, I may go under. 90 though, like 90.5, I feel like I have to go over even if I'm not in love with this team right now.
Yeah. I actually do like Showalter, but um, next team again, their rival in the NL East, the Braves, 90.5 wins as well. Again, just transactions, I guess, from them. They lose Freddie Freeman, but you gain Matt Olson. So again, Matt Olson isn't as good as Freddie Freeman, but in terms of your future or whatever, it's the right move, I would say. But again, he's still a really solid player. Matt Olson's a really good player. Um, you again, Acuna is going to come back at some point. So you have that. You still have Ozzy. You still have Dansby. You still have Austin Riley, who had a really good year last year. You'd expect him to have another really good year this year. Pitching wise, you're going to get pitchers back for them. They signed Kenley Jansen in the back of their bullpen. No matter what you think of him, he's still a pretty good closer. Even if he does blow games or whatever. So I like this team. I'm going to go over on them as well. It'd be hard not to see this team going over 90.5 wins. I think the only reason would be their pitching just isn't quite there. Their starting pitching just isn't quite there, but I think it will be. And again, this offense is good enough, even without Acuna for the first couple months. It's still good enough to score runs and be a pretty potent offense, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, you essentially instead of only having Acuna for the first half of the season, you trade the slight loss from Freddie Freeman to Matt Olson in exchange for getting Acuna for probably the second half of the season instead of the first half, which is obviously the more important half if you're going to pick, having that player in one or the other. I like this team. I think it's the team I'm picking to win the NL East, even though I think the Mets are competitive. We talked about the Phillies. To me, the Braves have been really consistent. And honestly, I mean, I think it's hard to really underestimate how insane the Acuna and Albies contracts were for a small market team like this.
Yeah.
Because you're honestly, if you had to sign those guys to contracts that they would actually get on the open market, you're probably losing Freeman and you're not getting anything. Like you're not adding Olson. But to be able to have Olson on this team pushes them from to me, which if they didn't have Olson, I'd probably predict them to not win the division. But because of, to have Olson, and then also that helps to, you don't have to have Acuna for the first half of the season. I think this team's going to be really good. So
Yeah, same. Now this is probably the most boring team out of the last like 8 to 10 teams left. It's the White Sox, just because they're in an easy division. They'll probably win it, pretty easily, to be honest. They're at 91 and a half. Again, it made some additions, some subtractions, but I, I mean, I guess I'll pick them over just because it's an easy division, like I said. But it's not really much to say about this team. They're just going to win their division.
Yeah, 91 and a half just feels low to me. It just feels pretty low. Like I don't want to bet over on this team. I think it is a boring team. But I think they've been pretty consistent the past year or two. They've made a few good trades in the past that I think have helped push them in this relatively weak division. So I'll go over. I think they're like a low 90s team, low 90s. But if I'm betting low 90s, the only way that I lose this if I'm betting the over is if it's 91 or 90. So I'm gonna go over, but I don't think it's by much, and I do have the winning division. So
Yeah, now the next three teams are for sure the most interesting. Well, I mean, at least just for,
if you're a
I
Yankees
guess the
fan, yeah,
top
the
part.
Yankees are probably pretty interesting. Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's true. But I mean, there's one team that is surprising. But I'm just gonna say all three. All three teams at 92 and a half wins is the Yankees, Astros, Blue Jays. Now, I guess let's first start with the Astros just because they're not, obviously the Yankees and Blue Jays are in the same division, but Astros, yeah, they lose Correa. That obviously hurts. I'm kind of surprised it's still a 92 and a half, to be honest. Like I thought it would be a little bit lower. Now maybe division plays a little bit of a factor into that, but the Angels are better, the Mariners are better. Like I'm still surprised at 92 and a half. I'm honestly going to go under on them. I still think they'll win the division. I think the Mariners could make it close, or the Angels, I guess, but I'm going to go under on 92 and a half. I just think that, unless Bregman goes back to 2019 when he was, a top three MVP candidate, and Altuve can, again, put it together a really good year, Jordan stays healthy, like, that's a lot of questions there offensively, and that's their strongest part of their team. Starting pitching wise, Justin Verlander is coming off Tommy John. Like, how much can you really expect from him? You have a couple young guys too, so I'm surprised it's as high as it was. But like I said, I'm going under on the Astros.
Yeah. I'm gonna go over on the Astros. I think the division is for sure plays a little bit of a factor. The Athletics blowing it up, I think, should give them a few more wins than maybe you'd expect. Um, I'm gonna go over. I like this team a lot. I'm not gonna say Bregman's gonna be 2019 Bregman, but Kyle Tucker, Alvarez, Altuve, Bregman. That's like this lineup should still be ridiculous even without Correa. Um, I'm not gonna say I expect a lot out of Verlander, but I don't view Tommy John. Maybe I'm underestimating how difficult Tommy John is to recover from once you're actually back and healthy, which he theoretically should be. Um, I'm not sure exactly where McCullers is with. I don't know what's going on there. I don't know if he's when he's coming back or if he is
Yeah,
back. Um, I think that's a relatively important part. But honestly, I could see this team having like 98, 99 wins. So I'm gonna go over. I've always been an Astros person. And obviously, they're if they can cheat, that would help me out too. I'm not saying they should or I want them to, but if they do want to do that, that would technically help my prediction out. So
yeah. But now, like I said, the two more interesting teams: the Yankees, Blue Jays. Start Yankees. So obviously, off season they didn't make any splash signings or anything like that. People were thinking maybe a Correa or a Story or whoever. I didn't think any of that was honestly a real possibility, unless it was like a 1 year contract, which I guess you could have done for Correa, but at that time it was kind of already passed. Pitching wise, you're banking on some guys coming back. Severino in particular, who's already kind of had his a little bit of setback already. And again, you're expecting Cole to be the number one guy, which he's been. I mean, for 2 years, he's been a top three Cy Young guy. You really can't complain about that. But yeah, if Judge stays healthy, if Stanton stays healthy, if Torres can return somewhat, wash away these last 2 years, return to what he was 2018, 2019. Yeah, this team's gonna. I mean, obviously, they're gonna be a good team. They're gonna make the playoffs. Well, I shouldn't say that in guarantee, but theoretically, they should make the playoffs, even if it's a wild card. But 92 and a half. I'm gonna go over because I mean, I'm a Yankee fan, but I mean, I do think this team is good enough to win over 92, to win 93 games. They should be. Again, when Judge is healthy, he's a top five player in the MLB, and it's really not a discussion, to be honest. Just look at his stats from last year. So I do like this team. They'll make moves at the deadline for sure. And yeah, I'm going to go over 92 and a half for the Yankees.
Yeah, I like this team. I do. I'm gonna go under. The four AL East teams we've talked about, I'm a little bit of a spoiler. I'm going over on three technically. This is the one I'm going under on. I'm not going completely, over on the Rays, but I did go over on them. So, um, yeah, my big concern here is just injuries and consistency. I mean, I like this team a lot, and if they are healthy, they are over 92 wins for me for sure.
Yeah.
But I mean, out of their whole lineup, how many of these players can I actually say like I trust to play, 150 games, honestly, at like an actual
Yeah.
healthy level? Judge obviously not. Donaldson's getting old. He was out of all like the offseason additions, like not that he's like a splash of an offseason addition, but out of all like the notable offseason moves, to me this was one of the weaker ones. Not saying they should have got like a story or like a Correa or whatever. I just, to me, for the money you got to pay him, for the age you're getting and the production that you're getting, and for the risk reward, it just doesn't feel as ideal of an addition compared to some other teams and what they were able to pick up. Um, Stanton can't stay healthy. Rizzo, LeMahieu, like what can I expect from them? I I don't know. To me, this seems a lot of question marks. That I think they have a high ceiling. Like I could see them at 103, 104 wins. I could also see them at like 85 because this division is just so competitive. If you only get 120 games out of Judge and like 90 out of Stanton, like it's over. Like I
Yeah.
don't think you're going over if you can't get a healthy season out of your best players, and I think that's a tough bet. So
Yeah. But the other team in the AL East, last team, Blue Jays, 92 and a half, like we said. Yeah, I mean, like a lot. It's super exciting if you're a Blue Jays fan. You have Vlad, who would have won MVP basically any other year if it wasn't for Otani's year last year. You have Bo Bichette. You have George Springer, fully healthy George Springer, like they didn't have last year. I think that's obviously exciting if you're Blue Jays. You trade for Matt Chapman. You have Teoscar Hernandez, who was an All Star last year. So you have a lot of pieces on this team. And again, pitching wise, you have Jose Barrios, who you got last year. I think he's a solid piece. Again, you lose Robbie Ray, but again, if was he ever going to replicate that year he had last year? Probably not. So I think it's probably good that you didn't re-sign him. You signed Kevin Gausman, so I think that's a solid pitcher to have. I think they have a solid rotation, decent bullpen, but again, the offense is where their strength is at. I mean, yeah, it's hard not to go over on this team. Like you're just like, there's no way I'm not expecting their top players to perform like top players. So I think the only thing that could hurt them is probably pitching, but I think it's good enough to the point where yeah, they could win over 92 and a half games.
yeah, I'm over on this team as well. This is something that I've heard a couple people talk about, but I actually haven't heard as much as maybe we should hear about it. The Blue Jays might have the best home field advantage out of any team in MLB
Yeah,
history.
yeah, it's true.
Listen, is it something is it something to bet over or under on? Maybe not, but you play 162 games, so home field is pretty important when you're playing that many games. Not that all those games are home, but it's important. Um, and you talked about it. On paper, this team is loaded. Pitching wise, I have concerns pitching. I don't. Can their pitching hold up in the postseason? We'll see. Not that you guys, you're never going to see. This isn't 2016 baseball where you had players pitching more than 5 innings. You don't even have that anymore. But do they have the caliber where they can have that amount of bodies pitching? Shutout 3 inning. I don't know, but yeah, I think this team's loaded. There's just no doubt about it. On paper, the lineup should be loaded. Pitching should be good enough in the regular season, even if they don't have any studs. But yeah, I go over on this team.
Yeah. And that leaves us with our last team, the Dodgers, 98 and a half wins. Again, they signed Freddie Freeman, which seems ridiculous that a team like that can get Freddie Freeman. Obviously they lose Seager, but you have Trey Turner, you have Justin Turner, you re-signed Chris Taylor, a lot of Taylors. You have Gavin Lux, you have Will Smith, you have Mookie Betts, Cody Bellinger, whatever he even is, you still have him. They traded AJ Pollock to get Craig Kimbrell to be their closer, because again they lost Kenley. They still have a really good bullpen. They still have a really good rotation. Walker Buehler is now the true number one on that team. Scherzer's gone. Kershaw's obviously not that guy anymore. So yeah, I mean it's a stacked team. It's honestly one of the most stacked lineups I've ever seen in my life, by far. 98 and a half wins. I mean, it's hard not to pick over. Just, I mean, the sheer talent that's on this team and the depth that they have is just ridiculous. So it's hard not to go over on this team.
I'm going over. Yeah, I think it's hard not to. I think this is another team where we see like 105 wins. It depends. The reason they're not at 105 over under is because injuries. It's 162 games. Baseball is a little different, and it's not like in the NFL and NBA. Typically, if a guy's a top five player, he's only going to have top five seasons. MLB, people like even the best players of all time have down seasons. So who knows what's going to happen? But yeah, this team to me is as a clear over. They've probably, I would say they've probably gotten worse from last year on paper. But I mean, they haven't gotten much worse. They've lost some players, but also gained some stars. I mean, Freddie Freeman is an incredible player. Yeah, if this isn't the best lineup I've ever seen, it's probably either another Dodgers team or I don't know, or it's a team that's like already been convicted of cheating. So I don't know. This team to me
Yeah.
is incredible. I cannot. My hope for every NL outcome, unless it's the Nationals coming out. Ideally, in a perfect world, it's the Dodgers getting out and then losing in the final, losing in the World Series in like a really just ugly way that you wouldn't want to see as a Dodgers fan. So that's my hope. If it's not the Nationals, which it's probably not going to be, so I go over, but I hope they lose in the World Series to a team. I would love to see them lose to the Blue Jays in the World Series.
That'd be a fun World Series. But and also just one more thing, I guess depending on what happens, but technically they should be able to get Trevor Bauer back. So, that just adds to what they have already, starting pitching wise. But that's all 30 teams, over unders every single one. We actually didn't pick awards for MLB, but we could do that, after the first, week or so. It's not like you need to do that before the season. You have time, obviously. So we'll do that sometime soon. All awards, but yeah, like I said, that was over unders for the 2022 season. And again, from when we're recording this, opening day is tomorrow, Thursday. So it's exciting.
Yeah, I think everybody should expect to see this out either tonight. Today, we're recording this on a Wednesday, or opening day, or sometime around there. But yeah, that's it. That's over unders. I think at some point, probably maybe towards the end of the season, we'll probably look back and maybe react to this. It'd be interesting just because who knows? I think we're probably gonna have a lot of misses and a lot of hits. I feel pretty good about my over unders. The MLB is tricky because it really does come down to like injuries and just consistency. Whereas in the NFL, it's a little bit more, it's not more predictable, but like 17 games is 17 games. 162 is like a lot of it can be, so much can happen in those 162 games that
Yeah.
it's a lot harder to predict. But anyways, that's it. Feel free to check out the NFL draft video. We'll also be coming out with some, other NFL stuff, NBA talk, more MLB talk as the season kicks off. So, yeah, that's it. Goodbye.